pardon, I'm talking quietly because my kid is falling asleep in the next room. Well, I just finished reading an arc. I just DNF'd a book that I was reading through Libby, and I have decided I need a break from reading on my phone. I have physical books again. I just want to hold a book while I read it. So I am going to look at my little TBR stack I have right now. This is my priority TBR stack. Some of this is stuff that I've just this I've had for years and I just haven't read it yet, partly because I was in another continent and I didn't take that book with me. But I also these are just all books I've had for a while and I should get around to reading. Well, not all of them I've had for a while. That's not true. A lot of these I've had for a while and I need to get around to reading them. But the thing that's really calling to me, I was thinking that I would want to read this because I've read the first two books in the series, so I should probably get around to reading the third because I was reading the second book earlier in the summer. But I actually think I want to read one of these two, and that's interesting. Maybe I'll try reading this because I almost never read I think these are both considered literary fiction. This may be more no, they're both historical literary fiction, I think. But I think I might try reading that and see how that goes and just have a real change of pace in terms of what I'm reading. And that will also go with a little video idea that I was talking about a little while ago. And maybe I'll try and read both books back to back and have a little combined video about them. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I just showered. I'm in my pajamas and I'm here to talk to you about the book club for Troublesome Women. What page am I on? I should check that before I start talking about this book. I'm at page 192 and I'm still liking it. It's a hard book for me to talk about because it's not a plotty book. So I have a hard time knowing how to talk about it. I mean, I guess that being said, most books with plot, I can't talk a lot about the plot because I'm trying not to give spoilers. But it's also just hard to talk about in the sense of I don't know how to talk about books like this because I don't usually read books like this. It's very much just kind of women dealing with things in their day-to-day lives. And that's the point. It's about what was life like for women in the 60s, for specifically upper middle class white women in America in the 60s. I guess not upper middle class, just middle class. We're at a point now where we know a lot more about each of the women's kind of personal and relationship struggles, about what they personally want in their lives, and we're seeing bits of their conflict, particularly the conflict they have with their husbands, some more so than others. One thing I will say that I appreciate about this is it would be easy to go full caricature with the portrayal of all the men in here, and I don't feel like it does. I feel like there's a subtlety to it, which I appreciate. It also makes it hard to read at some points. But it's Margaret's husband, Walt, is very passive aggressive and he'll shut her out. And he's drinking all the time, but it's not shown as him blow up wasted or staggering around or whatever. It's just every scene he's in, he's sitting down with a beer pretty much. Or he has a pack of beer next to him or whatever. And so there's definitely a sense of distance and control and subtle kind of manipulations against Margaret and stuff like that. And it's very, it works. It is an effective way of writing this. I guess the other one would be Bitsy and her husband. And so we learn about how did they meet? How did they become married? What's the backstory there? And we have a scene where, again, I don't want to get too into it because I don't want to give spoilers, but there's a scene where Bitsy and King are both present for an issue, and King is saying the solution is one thing, and Bitsy is saying, that's not true, this is also an option, and King basically just kind of mocks her for it and insults her and tries to humiliate her into towing the line, and Bitsy does not. And that part I really enjoyed. I really, really liked. I was very invested in that particular conflict. Charlotte was basically sent away by her husband. Again, I'm not going to get all into it, but she's kind of dealing with her marriage was essentially an arranged marriage, and so there's a lot of complicated things going on with that, and neither of them really care for each other. And there's a lot of kind of background stuff going on with that. There's some hints at, well, foreshadowing at possible other things that may come to pass because of this. Again, I'm trying not to get too detailed. And then the only one that we haven't seen like a lot of conflict between her and her husband is Viv, but like Viv has to hide something from her husband, and then that ends up getting revealed, and there's like a bit of, I wouldn't say quite a full blow up, but like a heated argument, and you know, they have their own issues, and just the fact that she felt the need to hide it from him in the first place speaks volumes about what she feels she would be allowed to do, kind of thing. And so that's where I'm at with that. I will say some of the scenes where the book is dealing with talking about historical events that were happening like at the time the book is set, or when the characters are talking about the texts they're reading, like the feminist texts they're reading, sometimes it gets a bit like on the nose. Like, I don't know how to explain it other than it's just like, this feels less like women in the 60s talking about a topic or noticing what's happening in the news, and more like the author taking a moment to step up and be like, you know, I don't want to say preachy, but it feels a bit, maybe I feel more like I'm in when I was in my classes in university kind of thing. And so that's a little bit of a like, but it's not, you know, it's still a fine read. So I'm that far in, and I don't know how much reading I'm going to get done. I got a bunch done on the weekend. I made myself sit down and like read several chapters at a time. But for the most part, I read 1 or 2 chapters at night while my kid is settling down to sleep. And I don't think I'll get through this before the weekend. And then my parents are visiting, so I don't know how much reading I'll get done on the weekend, but we'll see. Okay, bear with me. I am finishing a cough drop. Just deal with it. I am not quite done with my book, but very, very, very close. But I was going to wait to the end to talk about it, but I just need to talk about this. I have something I need to rant about right now, and so I just want to talk about it right now, and then I can focus on other things when I get to the end of the book. But right now, I just need to get this out. So I don't want to get into like super specific spoilers or anything, but there's a couple things in this book relating to men cheating on their wives, which totally makes sense. That's absolutely the thing that happens that people have to deal with. It sucks. It's especially relevant in the time period of this book. It's set in the 60s at a time when women were extremely financially dependent on husbands, like by design. And so like, absolutely, that makes sense that this is a thing that this book would deal with. That's all fine. The woman who has been cheated on being mad at the woman, like at the other woman, especially if it is apparent that the other woman knew that they were the other woman, that makes sense. That's fine. Even a certain amount of shaming a woman for sleeping with a man she knew was married, that's fine. What's not fine is this feminist book, a book about a feminist revolution in her buttoned up suburb. That's the tag. Having sex shaming? Why do I keep reading feminist books that have sex shaming in them? What the fuck are we doing? It happens a couple times, and like the first few times I kind of wrote it off because it was like an in-passing thing, and I was like, it's just supposed to be like the language of the time or whatever. This is how the people in the setting would talk about it. It was like an offhand mention of, oh yeah, you heard so-and-so's husband was caught involved with whoever and now they're separated or whatever, and it's like, oh, you know, I can't believe he'd go for that floozy or whatever. And it's like, she didn't talk about it that way, but like, okay, sure, that's just how the characters are talking about it, it's fine. But there's like a big scene in here involving a woman confronting her cheating husband, and in the process of confronting him, she also confronts 2 women that he cheated on her with, and both women she refers to as tramps, floozies, bimbos. And I'm like, we don't need to do all that. You can just be like, hey, you're an asshole. Don't sleep with someone else's husband. What is wrong with you? But also, this it's billed as a feminist book, right? But it's not just, as I had kind of expected it to be, upper middle class white feminism or even just middle class white feminism. The book makes a point to acknowledge intersectional aspects of feminism, like how women of color are affected, or even broadly people of color are affected by inequality, and how, the gender division of labor and demands of capitalism hurts men too. And like it acknowledges these things. So there should also be, like, even outside of the sex shaming aspect of it, where is the acknowledgement that these women who slept with someone's husband, both of them, so in that big confrontation scene, both of them they're working in an office in a position below him. So he absolutely has the ability to exert power over their ability to, like over their career, over their ability to continue working in that place, over how much money they earn. But there's no acknowledgement or even like half a thought toward that. And I can't I can't wrap my head around that decision in these feminist books, because this book is set in the 60s, but it was written or published in 2025. So 100% this was written at a time when people are aware of issues with sex shaming, and how, like, in workplaces being, propositioned by a superior could be a threat to your job if you refuse. Like, how are we not acknowledging that? Especially because there's a character earlier in this book who's in a position where she's basically in a position where she has an ultimatum of either I do sexual favors for this person for the chance at something happening for my career, or I refuse, and that chance, like, that door is shut forever. And she refuses, and that's something that's seen as, like, that's understandably a very difficult thing, but, like, I'm glad you did that kind of thing. But, like, then these other women are presumably put in a similar position, and they're shamed and insulted for it, and we're supposed to feel happy that they're publicly humiliated. Anyway, I just needed to get that off my chest. I'm gonna try and finish reading this book now, because again, I am extremely close to the end. It would be silly not to finish it right now. And then maybe I'll come back with more thoughts, but what the fuck? Okay, I finished reading it, and I think this is like a 3. It could have been a 4, but it ended up being a 3. 1, all the stuff I ranted about earlier. 2, I don't know how I feel. I get what the ending is doing, but I think it ultimately felt like, I probably shouldn't be talking about this book yet, because I literally just finished reading it. Okay, give me a second to recalibrate my thoughts. The ending in concept is fine. It's a giant flash forward late into the characters' lives. We find out where they've all ended up, what all they've accomplished, all this stuff. And that's great. I understand the idea. The problem is that a lot of it is very, like, it doesn't feel as satisfying, because it's like, oh, for example, Bitsy went through all this stuff and had this difficult, situation with her relationship. I should probably give a preface that there's some spoilers here. I'm going to try not to get into too many details, but there are going to be some mild spoilers. So Bitsy ended up divorced, and we know that that's the case in the, like, initial timeline, and then we do the jump forward for a chapter, for, like, basically an epilogue. It's not labeled as an epilogue, but it's an epilogue. And it's like, oh, Bitsy and her husband Kyle, and I'm like, the cool dude I've never met. I guess good for her that she found a partner, but, like, it doesn't have the same kind of satisfaction, because it's not like this is a character we met at some point and then get to be like, oh, it's just some dude. I'm a little about how Charlotte's ending was handled. in terms of like the epilogue. Um, there's just a lot of like, it feels like a bunch of lists of like, and then this person and all of their children went on to do this in this place, and then this person and all of their children went on to do this in this place. And I don't know, also like the way the ending was catalyzed was weird, because it's about like, it's a major, political event that did happen, but the way the author chose to make it matter to the characters, like specifically to Margaret, is like, I don't know, it was just like a weird choice. And I don't know, I just feel like again, I'm trying to talk about it without getting too spoilery. But like, I feel like I would have been fine if this event happened and it shook her up, and it was just like the fact of this event happening changed her perspective, and that's why she went down the path she did. But like, it didn't really feel like, it felt like a thing happened externally to her, and then she just decided to change her life because of it. And it didn't feel like it was something that the book had built to necessarily. It just happened. Where the thing I was expecting to be the big life-changing moment would be another writing related thing happening to her, and then we jump forward and see where that's gone. But that wasn't what happened, so it just felt very disconnected and random. Without getting into specifics and spoilers, I don't really know what else to say. I am planning on, I mean, if you're watching this video, obviously you will know, but I am planning to do this combined with another book. I'm going to then read, I think it's called Lady Tan's Circle of Women, just because they seem kind of thematically related, and I think that's fun to read together. But I'm not going to read that right now because I don't think my brain could handle that back to back. It feels weird because I'm not closing out the video, because this isn't the end of the video, because I'm going to read another book. But I'm also not going to be talking in this video for a while. So anyway, whatever. I'll see you when I see you. Okay, it's the next night and I've had a shower, and I've also had thoughts about the book club for Troublesome Women. First of all, the title. None of these women end up being particularly troublesome over the course of the book, except in their very immediate interpersonal lives. So the title feels like a bit of a misnomer, or like misleading, I guess. Second, one of the characters has this thing established pretty early on involving a man in her life, and the other at least one of the other characters is concerned for what's going on with this man in her life, and is worried that it is maybe dangerous or untoward. And this is built up and built up and built up, and it is resolved off page. It is a confrontation that happens off page. And I understand that the confrontation about that confrontation, I'm trying not to get into spoilers, that happens between the character who was concerned for her and the character who had things going on with this man. I understand that was a catalyst for character change, but the fact that there was so much buildup about this man and we don't see anything is like, why? We probably could have gotten to this avenue of change through another means that happened on page. Even the way perspective changes were handled, like in the first chapter we get all 4 women's perspectives, so I thought it would be a story that like is continually going back and forth between their perspectives, and it does do that eventually, but a good chunk of the book is just from Margaret's perspective, to the point that I thought it was only going to be from her perspective. And so, or like it would be her perspective, and then now and then we'd get a quick little glimpse of another character, and then it would go back to being all her perspective. And so it made it so that when we did end up getting the other characters' perspectives more consistently, it ended up feeling like, I don't know, the best way I can describe it is, it made Margaret feel like the main characters and the other 3 feel like side characters or like supplementary characters, and I don't think that was the intent. I think they were all supposed to be major characters, but they were given such uneven focus. This is a very personal nitpick, but I definitely, while reading the epilogue, was like, this is in 2006, and there are so many characters, like just names, so many names. Viv has 7 children. How how is there not, and like they're adults at this point. They're all adults into their careers by this point. Every child is an adult. Um, how is there no queer people anywhere? Um, Very personal nitpick, but like statistically, 7 children, not one of them? Really? There were random moments throughout the book where the narration would take a step back and kind of fourth wall break and talk about world politics. And I get what it was going for. It was trying to like have the juxtaposition of this, small community and these daily lives and how they're having their own kind of like, you know, shocking change and like mini little revolution in their own social circle, revolution. But like at the same time, these big global changes are happening, and it's just a time in general of change. But it mostly just ended up feeling kind of weird, particularly because the book was usually like the narration was so focused on the characters that for it to step that far outside of them, just it was jarring and like kind of took me out of the story. And it also ended up making the things the characters are saying and doing feel that like just feel kind of silly, because it's like, oh yes, the self-immolating monks of Vietnam or whatever, and then here's Margaret being upset about having to write fluff pieces for a magazine. And I'm like, I mean, what she's concerned about isn't unimportant. It is like, yes, it's fair that she wants to be able to write something with meaning and give voice to her own opinions and thoughts. But that is an interesting thing to contrast against what's happening in your story. There was also a point where it was referencing like moments of great change, and this is a moment in the 60s. It's in relation to John F. Kennedy. But one of the moments it references like in the narration to the reader, and this is where it really becomes a fourth wall break, is it has a phrase, the towers fell. And I'm like, not in the 60s. I don't even know if the towers were built in the 60s. So, like, I as a reader know what you're referring to, but in the context of the story, why are we referring to the Twin Towers? I think those were all the things I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to make sure I did bring those up because I knew it was going to bother me if I didn't. So now I will, at some point, get to reading the next book, and I'll talk about that in the next clip.
I started reading this book, Lady Tan Circle of Women by Lisa C. And I almost DNF'd the first chapter because one, the descriptions of foot binding, I understand why they're there, but I find them very hard to stomach. Two, I don't super like the writing. It feels very flat. And like where I'm at now, I've read more. I did make it past the first chapter. I'm on page like 30 something, I think. Hang on. I made it to page 35. And so like I'm not super far into the book, but like, you get a feel for what the writing's like and stuff like that. And I feel like by page 35, I should have an idea of what the voice is. And currently, I don't have a strong vibe of what kind of person or like personality or character the main character is, or her sibling, or her dad, or her mom who has passed. Or like the only people I kind of have a vibe on are Miss Zhao and her grandparents. And the only reason I have a vibe on them is because they act. Everyone so far has very much been this is the propriety expected of this person, so this is how they act. And then there's nothing else. And Miss Zhao and the two grandparents are the only characters who are outside of that. So hopefully we get more character and like nuance and depth beyond that. Because if not, like I might end up DNFing this book because it's going to be so boring, and I just don't know if I can, like, it doesn't look like a super long book, right? That's not an incredibly long book. But I feel like the font is kind of small. Like, each page seems to take a while to read. We'll see how it goes. But there's a possibility that I might be DNFing this book. We will see. I don't have a lot I can really talk about at this point in terms of like the story. we're still very much in the setup phase, which is also part of why I want to give it more time. But yeah, I don't know. I'll see how it goes. Hello again. I read some of this book. I don't even think I made it to page 70. Yeah, I made it to page 67. My intent had been to read at least 100 pages and then decide if I was going to keep going. And then I was reading and I saw, like, I looked ahead to see, like, how long is this chapter? And I saw that the chapter ended on page, I think it was like page 76 or page 77 or something. And then that was the beginning of the next part. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll just read to the end of this part and then I'll see if I want to keep going. And then I couldn't even get to the end of the chapter because I was just like, I am bored. I don't like the writing style. It feels really flat. It often feels very like zoomed out, for lack of a better word. Like I don't feel like I am seated in the character. I feel like I'm getting an overview of what's happening to the character, an overview of her life through most scenes. Some scenes go more into detail, but usually the scenes that we're actually sat in are just characters talking and talking and talking and talking and not having like a conversation, but just talking about like what the medical theory of the time was, which like to a certain extent is interesting, but I want more than just to talk about the blood and the key and the like. Can I have character in this book? And yeah, like the dialogue feels very. The dialogue is a vehicle for information. It is not a conveyance of character. Um, I'm just not interested. I'm really bored. So if I couldn't push myself to read 10 more pages of this chapter, there's no way I can push myself to read this entire book. So it is a DNF. Unfortunately, this 2-book video only really has me talking about one book. But hey, it was an experiment. I was trying something different, and I kind of mostly did it. Wish I had better experiences with these books, but you don't know what it's going to be until you read it, right? Anyway, that is all for this video. We got, what, a 3-star and a DNF? If you made it to the end of the video, please leave some sort of woman-related emoji in the bottom. And let me know, I guess, let me know if there's other books or like themed videos you'd like to see me do, especially regarding, like I did a video before of like what books I have that I need to read currently. Yeah, anyway, enough rambling. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Bye!